Hey everyone, greetings. So excited to be joined by he's one of my personal heroes, Dr. James Thorp. Um, Dr. Thorp has so many credentials, it's hard to even uh, get through his bio, but I always insist on doing that because I always want you to know how credentialed our heroes are. And these are the people who stood up for you. And let's see, he's chief of maternal and prenatal health at the Wellness Company. He's focused on optimizing outcomes in women of reproductive age, pregnant women, preborns, and newborns. All human life begins at the womb is his mission statement. It has been said in medicine that an ounce of prevention is worth a pound of cure. In my specialty of obstetrics, this is an understatement. And this is his kind of mission statement on the Wellness Company's website. Regarding optimization of maternal health prior to conception and preborn life in the womb, an ounce of prevention is worth 2 tons of cure. If we want to optimize outcomes in children, it starts in optimizing maternal health prior to conception and optimal preborn fetal growth and development in the womb. You never hear obstetricians talk like that. I mean, that's not your usual mission statement from obstetricians. That was very beautiful. And do you want to add anything to that? I know that since I last interviewed you, when we last had a long interview, you were in the middle of lawfare with the university where you had been a distinguished resident or fellow, I'm not sure of the exact technical term. And instead of celebrating the work that you did protecting women and babies during the pandemic and after, they were engaged in vilifying your reputation. Do you want to pick up from there and tell me what you've been doing professionally since then?
Sure. Well, I for the last not quite a year, but at least maybe 9 months, I've been private contracting as a maternal fetal medicine subspecialist in a very large Midwest city. That location I shouldn't disclose. I'm private contracting through a locums tenens company, one of the largest in the country. So I'm not employed by the hospital, and that's a key issue. Dr. Wolf, because as you know, as an employee at SSM Health, one of the largest Catholic hospitals that I formerly worked for, I was fired because of my position and my outspoken position in the United States Senate and multiple platforms like yours, denouncing the safety of the COVID-19 vaccine in pregnancy. So for that, I was fired. Because that hospital, like all the rest of them, SSM Health took $307 million from HHS, entering into a secretive, under the table, I believe, unethical, illegal, certainly immoral contract in which they were obliged to follow all of the draconian COVID-19 mantras and dogma of the HHS. And if they didn't, they would have to pay that money back. So they had to fire me without cause, acknowledging that I was one of their model employees and treated me as such. But they did fire me. They lied. They did fire me for cause. The cause was that I testified in the United States Senate and was publicly, and plus I had given them all the publications, multiple publications that I had authored. And did they offer to talk about that or set me up for grand rounds or put me in front of the hospital board and let's talk about the problems that this data is showing? No, dead silence.
So can I just jump in for a minute and interrupt? I'm sorry, Dr. Thorp. Sorry that this keeps moving. Let me understand just a little more fully. How could they fire you for cause for addressing the United States Senate? That doesn't make any sense to me at all.
They fired me without cause.
Without cause.
There was a contract that I signed, and I worked them for almost 5 years, where either myself or SSM could give, let's see, it was 120 days notice of leaving. Either side could do that without cause.
I see.
That's what they optioned but they did lie about it because they didn't give me the 120 days. They fired me on the spot because I refused to take an almost $100,000 bribe and sign a non-disclosure agreement. But that's the key with my current employment. I'm extremely busy on site at a very large hospital, and they treat me like a king. They treat me like gold. And this is a large Midwest city. And Dr. Wolf, it's unbelievable. Nobody's getting vaccinated. Hardly any of my patients, and I'm seeing a lot, are getting vaccinated for anything, even the other vaccines now. I've never seen anything like it. So that's the good news. The bad news is I'm still seeing adverse outcomes from even those patients taking the shots early on that haven't taken another one.
Oh my gosh. Well, let's drill down a little deeper in the good news, and then we'll go to the bad news. So your patients, meaning the moms, or the moms and the babies, are not getting vaccinated? Are you saying that the moms have decided and the dads have decided not to trot their kids through the horrific vaccine schedule, that they're not getting, they're resisting when their pediatricians say you need HPV and you need this and you need that? Is that what you're seeing?
What I'm seeing out there, and I want to be respectful because they're in dire need. At the turn of the century, there were about only 2,500 of us double-boarded, high-risk maternal fetal medicine docs. Dr. Wolf, now there's only half as many 25 years later. So my subspecialty is in a critical shortage. So I want to help where I can, and plus it's a passion that I have. The good deal here is that I'm not employed by the hospital. I'm sure that they took money just like SSM Health did, but since I'm not an employee, I'm not on their website, and they don't really care. In fact, I'm told that the CEO of this hospital is actually aligned on my side.
No.
And they treat me very well. The staff, the nurses, the other doctors. The problem is that I've had 2 book signings in this city at the Barnes and Noble, and everybody is coming out of the hospital, discovering, what I do and who I work for and the platforms that I've been on, like yours. And then that has been created quite a furor in the hospital, but it's all been positive.
Oh,
Nothing
wow.
negative.
That's wonderful. I'm so glad to hear that. I was braced for the opposite. That's fantastic. Well, congratulations. You deserve it. I'm really glad to hear that that's the case. So going to your, statement that you're not seeing people take other vaccines, are you saying the moms or the babies? Like, I'm not really sure who your patients are. Are they women in childbirth, or are they women who come back with their babies later on?
Great question. And I'm sure your audience is confused, as are most physicians confused about what I do as a high-risk maternal fetal medicine specialist. So typically, my patient would be the pregnant mom and the preborn. And as soon as we deliver the baby, the obstetrician cuts the umbilical cord and passes the baby off to the pediatrician. We are no longer under the direct supervision of the newborn, although we get a lot of feedback. So what I'm saying with regards to the vaccines is, in pregnancy, the vaccines have essentially, nobody's taken the COVID-19 vaccines that I'm aware of. And a lot of the other vaccines, they're not buying onto, including the flu vaccine. And in terms of the newborns, I have so many mothers that are pregnant that tell me they're not letting their child get any vaccines.
Wow.
They tell me. And so many of my patients, fortunately or unfortunately, I try to leave, my viewpoints out of my physician-patient relationship, unless I'm asked directly. But fortunately or unfortunately, a lot of the patients are recognizing me now because of platforms like yours and others that I've been on, and so on and so forth. And then they bring up the conversation and they start asking me questions, which if they ask me questions, I'm obliged to.
Hey everyone, it's Naomi Wolf, and I have a message. President Trump is in the process of what he calls draining the swamp. But many in the MAGA movement and the MAHA movement are asking if he'll expose the entire pandemic. There's enough public evidence for people to be concerned who injected themselves in what has turned out to be a massive experiment. If you were compelled to get the shot for work, travel, maybe you just trusted the system, check out this natural solution formulated by hero Dr. Peter McCullough in collaboration with the wellness company. They just leveled up their original detox formula, and it costs $30 less. We are introducing the 3-in-1 Ultimate Spike Detox. It's now conveniently consolidated into a single capsule with 4 times more nattokinase, 500 milligrams of bromelain, and 500 milligrams of turmeric root extract. Nattokinase, an enzyme researched for its anti-clotting effects, may work to break down spike proteins. Combined with bromelain and curcumin, it provides a potent blend for detoxification and cellular support. Crafted with 100% natural ingredients, Ultimate Spike Detox is backed by research. It offers effective support for your cell's natural repair and recovery. Experience the only formula approved and used by Dr. Peter McCullough, a top freedom-fighting doctor who risked it all to bring you the truth. Head over to DailyCloutHealth.com and use the code DailyClout to get 10% off. Plus free shipping. Again, that's dailyclouthealth.com and use the code DailyClout to get 10% off and get back to that pre-COVID feeling.
Answer them honestly.
Sure. I'm really glad to hear that. That's wonderful. I mean, I what we've been through, I never thought I'd live to see the day that a hospital would be treating you as respectfully as it should, and that your patients would be delighted to know that it was the great Dr. Thorp who was treating them. I would not be surprised if you weren't getting people coming to see you from parts of the country where, they don't have someone like you. I'm very, very glad to hear that that's how it's playing out. And then you said the not so good news is that some of your patients, the moms, presumably, or the babies too, are still showing side effects. Do you want to speak to that?
Yeah, I think, again, since nobody has been willing to fund the research that you and I want and need and our patients require to be done, that is what's causing the disastrous pregnancy outcomes, is the spike protein in the fetal tissues, in the maternal tissues, in the placentas. We have the capability of doing that. And I'm involved with the Advanced Biological Research Group, a 501c3, and we have a study nearly funded and it's approved by the IRB, but yet we do lack funding because traditional research like this is always done by the government or the pharmaceutical companies. It's paid for. So we don't know what is causing these severe adverse outcomes. I think you and I have a really good idea. We've talked about it before, but I'm seeing patients now that for 4 years since their last shot, Dr. Wolf, they still have very high anti-spike protein antibody levels, extremely high. So even though they haven't taken another shot, their body is still producing the spike protein or the bioweapon. And of course, that I believe is continuing to contribute to adverse pregnancy outcomes as well as infertility. And obviously, you're aware that it's causing a vast array of more delayed morbidities and mortalities in all the people in the world that have taken the vaccines.
Right. Well, let's focus in a little more just on your own experience with your patients. And by the way, I do remember that you were, when we last spoke, just starting this research initiative, and I'm so excited about it. And of course, we want to, support it by shining a light on it all we can. So after this interview, if you'll let me know more, send me a one-pager, I'll post it so people can give you the money that you need to complete this incredibly important research. So when you say that your patients are showing side effects of the spike protein, so you're saying there's a test that you do to check the antibodies that they have to the spike, and that's a way of seeing if they still have spike circulating in their bodies. Is that correct? And is that a test that anyone can have? They can ask their doctor for it in any hospital?
Actually, you know what, Dr. Wolf? They don't even have to go through their doctor. There's several private portals that are available. I actually give my patients the portal, and my friends and family and people that call me up. It's called ultalab.com, ULTA labtest.com. And it's a private portal, and you can order your own laboratories and schedule your own blood draw. And it's about 10% of the cost of going that it would be those labs if you went through your doctor's office. So it's very convenient, and they can order their own labs. And yes, you can order a antibody, a quantitative antibody directed against the spike protein, and measure that level. And I have patients, we know from the Yale study that the Yale study showed that there's many patients that are 200, 300 days out that are still having the positive spike antibody and spike production. Well, that's nothing. I have patients in vaccine injured that I've talked to, and I've seen their labs. They're continuing to produce spike antibody for 4 years since the last shot.
Oh my God. Dr. Thorp, this is so disturbing. And of course, you're confirming, what the Yale study found and what Dr. McCullough has also found. Probably many dissident doctors have found this by now. But I guess my question to you, as someone who has a lot of loved ones who are vaccinated, is, have you ever seen labs of a vaccinated person that show no spike protein antibodies, that they've cleared the spike protein from their bodies?
Yes, I haven't done as many as Dr. McCullough has done. But yeah, I think that there are individuals, and it's not surprising. I would guess that at least 30% at least would clear the antibodies. And why do I say that? Because Dr. McCullough believes, and many other experts, and I think that I don't know where I stand on it, but they're convinced that the study of Schmeling and colleagues way back in 2021 that found that those individuals that got injected with the vaccination, COVID-19 vaccination, and there were 30% that had zero side effects, not even swelling or redness at the injection site. Dr. McCullough is convinced that those individuals received placebo or saline, and he may be right. And so those individuals, of course, you wouldn't ever expect to produce a spike antibody or a spike protein unless they had COVID. There are COVID-19 infection, that mRNA, the COVID-19 infection in of itself has an RNA that will also produce a different type of spike protein that can be differentiated. But of course, those cases are much lower and stay around for a lot less time than does the mRNA generated spike protein from the vaccine.
Wow. So you're scaring me even more, I'm afraid. Basically, if you haven't had the actual mRNA injection, but a saline injection, you will not show spike. You may show spike if you've had COVID, but have you ever seen or have you heard of anyone having labs, someone who definitely got, the injection with the MR, like maybe someone who had spike protein in their system from the injection in their first test, and then later there was a test that showed, in other words, is there any evidence that if you've actually had the mRNA injection with, it wasn't a placebo and you haven't had COVID, that your body will ever clear that spike?
Yeah, I think that Dr. McCullough has data on several of his patients in which, especially with the ultimate spike supplement that he's using with the increased doses of the nattokinase, the bromelain, and others, that the levels can actually fall and decline pretty rapidly.
Do you know what the mechanism is? I mean, if the nattokinase and the bromelain, as I understand it, kind of break up the spike, does it get excreted in the liver, in the urine? Like, where does it go?
That's a great question. And I don't have the answer to that. And I don't know that anybody else does, but it appears to degrade the spike protein, and probably, just speculation, there's increase in destruction and clearance of the spike protein, likely by enzymatic mechanisms, and then the molecules chopped up and ultimately excreted somehow, either through the liver or through the urine. I don't know, and I don't think anybody really knows that.
Isn't it crazy how much we don't know? Like, isn't it crazy that
Yes.
there are these urgent scientific and medical questions facing us all as a society? And we know what the questions are now, right? The top 10 big questions, we know what they are, but there's, nothing but initiatives like yours, underfunded initiatives. I mean, no doubt very important, what you'll be finding, but it should be all the universities. It should be, well, maybe we'll see some changes with our friend Dr. Bhattacharya at NIH, but I just can't believe I was in Iceland and the audience was asking me about the fibrous clots that are appearing in like 30% of cadavers. And we all were astonished that nobody knows what they are, and that there's no studies being done by the governments of the world to find out, does the spike clear? What are these fibrous clots? And so on. But anyway,
Isn't it amazing? Isn't it catastrophic? I mean, there's this willful, blindful cover up and ignorance and denial.
Yeah. I will just share. I just had craniosacral therapy done for an injury that I've sustained. And I started crying, in the session. I don't mean to overshare, but it's related to your work. You didn't make me cry. You're one of the few people who didn't, but I just started weeping and weeping because I was holding so much anger and astonishment and incomprehension that all the people who are supposed to be protecting babies and women and the human race, that like 2 of them stepped up. You're 5, like that all this whole army of people who are supposed to care about, women and babies just let this horrible evil, and continue to let this horrible evil unfold. So anyway, I've just overshared. I'll go back to the urgent questions at hand that don't have to do with me and my, immense load of grief looking at the way the world has behaved for the last 5 years. You have spoken, of course, about increased rates of miscarriage, stillbirth, and menstrual irregularities. And what are the data showing now? And why do you think all of this is being ignored?
Well, I think that, to answer your last question first, all of it is being ignored. Let's take the model example of why it's all being ignored. Let's look at Dr. Marty Makary, who's now with the FDA and got the appointment. Dr. Marty Makary, who allegedly wrote a book. I think his name is on the book. I think that he acknowledged that in the acknowledgments that it was really written by several other contributors. Doesn't seem like a book that a physician would write. It was well written from what I can see of it. The name of the book is Blind Spots. The something else, a longer subtitle, like how medicine made serious errors, in the last many decades.
Mm-hmm.
But unbelievably, I've read the book. Oxymoronically, the name of the book, Blind Spots, the greatest mistake and tragedy and catastrophe in the history of medicine, is the current vaccine, the COVID-19 vaccine. And Dr. Marty Makary doesn't even address it.
You're kidding.
Doesn't even address it.
Are you kidding me? That's
No.
insane. And
No.
he was in this, I know that he's in the circle, the Brownstone circle, knows Dr. Kulldorff, knows Dr. Bhattacharya. Obviously, I can't believe that he would not include that. My gosh. I mean, he's working for RFK Jr. Well, now, I guess he wrote the book before this, but wow, that is pretty serious. Okay, go on.
Let's talk about where he was working before.
All right.
He was working at Johns Hopkins University, the most corrupted, the most captured, the most bribed hospital/university system in the world. Just in 2022, they received $1.2 billion, Dr. Wolf, to continue to further support. And remember, those of us independently that went and looked at that data from VAERS, which I spent a massive amount of time on VAERS and also on Pfizer's own data from their post-marketing survey. They because the HHS and Rochelle Walensky and Tom Shimabukuro couldn't deride the VAERS system because they were in charge of it. In fact, they vouched for the veracity of it.
Right.
In 2021, on tape, on record, in print. Mm-hmm. But what did they do? They turned their dirty bidding over to guess who? Johns Hopkins University, who created a website that went after people like you and people like me that had the audacity to cite the governmental data as showing the huge breaches of safety signals. And they called us anti-vaxxer nuts. Literally, they created a website.
What was this website? I'm not familiar with it.
Yeah, it's. I'll send you a link to it. It's really pathetic, but it really derided VAERS and said, "Oh, it's not accurate." Well, of course it was accurate. It's been very accurate, as Rochelle Walensky and Tom Shimabukuro admitted to.
Well, the government runs VAERS. If it's not accurate, it's their fault.
That's right.
They can't have it both ways. Well, that's really shocking. I mean, I did know that Johns Hopkins is ground zero of evil because it's the source of the world map, the COVID map that was reproduced on the cover of every major news outlet, including the New York Times, day after day after day after day during the pandemic. And the data sets were proprietary. You couldn't see them. And one of the graphic designers, to his credit, who was hired to create graphic design for this world map, leaked to me the fact that only 4 states actually were reporting their data, and everything else was conjecture. So it was a fake map. It was a fake COVID map. I mean, it's one of the.
I did not know that.
It drove everything. It drove the news. It drove policy. It drove money. It led to fear, and it bullied people into getting the injection. Like, oh my God, this New York State is spiking. So they are truly, truly evil. Well, I hear what you're saying. So are you saying? I mean, what are you going so far as to say? Are you suggesting that Johns Hopkins kind of groomed Marty Makary to be a?
Yes. Yeah, they did. And, James Roguski, I think you know him. He's a prominent Substacker. And he put a Substack out yesterday. And I actually retweeted that and his Substack and made some comments on it to Dr. Makary and asked him about his book and the name of the book and how, you couldn't even make it up that the name of the book was Blind Spot. It doesn't even, reviewing the catastrophes in medicine, and he completely ignores the COVID-19 vaccine. And I asked him if we could get together and collegially talk about this. And And I also pointed out what I just pointed out with you. But, Marty Macri, it should be no surprise to you. I mean, he pushed all the fairy tales for the first 2 years. He was an adamant pusher of the vaccine. He was an adamant pusher of closing everything down, locking everything down, and face masks. So, people usually don't change their colors, right? They don't change their stripes. So very few people change. So as James Roguski pointed out, he's done zilch. In fact, he's gone on record this last week of saying he's not going to shut down the pharmaceutical advertising on television and sports events. He's not going to do that. He thinks that's too drastic.
It's really interesting. I mean, it's such a complex chess game, right? It did strike. I'm not saying I agree with you or don't agree, and I don't want to get sued for libel by Marty Macari. But I definitely noticed that there are some people who were kind of let in the gates, early on. And I just will never forget, we were all in outer darkness, right? Totally canceled for even raising questions about masks or lockdowns and so on. And, I noticed that this guy, Marty Macari, was able to publish in the Wall Street Journal and in the New York Times, I think. And I kept thinking, why are they letting him in? Right? Like what is it? Right. And I don't know the answer, but I'll generalize and step back and say, I am observing several figures who pop up out of nowhere, right? I'm not saying that's Marty Macari, but people who pop up out of nowhere don't have any bio or record as spokespeople for medical freedom or health freedom or freedom for that matter. A couple of them, I won't name names, are definitely from the biotech space or Silicon Valley, health data space. But that's kind of elided in their kind of new minting as health freedom personalities. And then boom, they're in the center of the action with health freedom policy, or what would be health freedom policy. So, it's a cynical world out there. And I've been a political consultant, and I know you can kind of, craft the personalities you need for any given moment. But I think we're right to always be skeptical, I guess, is the conclusion there, without drilling in too much to any one bio. I mean, you can, but I shouldn't. So are you seeing in the big picture data any easing of the shocking miscarriage rates that you and I have often discussed, the 13 to 20% drop in live births, the rise in maternal mortality? Is that behind us yet, or are miscarriages still?
I have not seen the latest data on maternal mortality. As you know, maternal mortality rose over about 30% from 2021 to 2020, 2021 after the vaccine till 2 years later, 2023, 30% increase in maternal mortality. And I was very interested, and it was pretty scary to see Elon Musk come out yesterday or the day before with his video saying, the world population is declining like it's never declined before. Birth rates are lower and plummeting like we've never seen them before. He also stated that the birth rate in the United States of America is lower than it's ever been before. I'm not sure where he got his data, but he's a pretty intelligent man. Mm-hmm. So I wouldn't doubt him. Yeah. And that's of grave concern to me.
Yeah. You have to stay healthy and well at times like this. That I often have suffered from mobility issues, and now I don't. Part of my lifestyle is Native Path collagen. So Native Path's collagen formula is made with ingredients that are scientifically developed to increase bone mineral density, support tissue recovery, reduce wrinkles, enhance hair thickness, and strengthen nails. Who wouldn't want more collagen with all of these benefits? So right now, when you visit getnativepath.com/DailyClout, you can stock up on Native Path collagen for up to an incredible 45% off today, plus free shipping. Every order comes with a 365-day money-back guarantee. You can try it risk-free today. It is a single ingredient formula with no fillers, additives, or artificial sweeteners, and it's third-party tested for heavy metals, which makes sure that it's pure and safe. It's flavorless. You can add it to anything. I add it to my oatmeal. You can add it to coffee or smoothies. Its formula makes it more bioavailable, meaning it's absorbed more easily and mixes without clumping. And the best part is Native Path is offering amazing bundle deals, 3 or 6 packs at a fraction of the price of other brands. With over 4 million jars sold, 1 million happy customers, 8,000 5-star reviews, and a 365-day no-risk guarantee, Native Path is a trusted choice, and they offer an 800 number. You can ask any question. A real person is waiting to help. You can join a private Facebook community. I love these people. Share recipes, success stories. So that's getnativepath.com/DailyClout and start your experience of transformation today. Yeah, no, I second that. As I mentioned, I was just in Iceland, and it's only got 400,000 people in the whole nation. This ancient population. And they can't spare, they can't risk damage to their fertility. And they're almost 100% vaccinated. There was this intensive, effort to vaccinate them. Exactly. So now there's 500 missing Icelandic babies a year for this tiny population of 400,000 people total. And they're down they were at a 2.1% replacement rate, then 1.9%. Now they're down to 1.5%. So they are going to die out.
That's catastrophic.
It's catastrophic.
They're under the control of Belgium, right? Is that right?
Denmark. No longer under the control. They have independence, but they have ties to Denmark. Yeah.
So not surprising that they had kind of the same stances as Denmark and the UK and the United States and Canada, right?
Yeah, I think it was more, this World Health Organization, globalist, figurehead prime ministers and governments kind of targeting this population. And they were, I don't mean to get down a rabbit hole, but the globalists were very interested in the DNA, and harvesting the DNA of this population, because they're very, I don't want to say pure in a racialist sense, but there are very few populations that have been kind of on their own for 1,000 years on a land mass that's surrounded by water. So they were, I would say, experimenting on them the way they experimented on Israel. That I think the globalists treated Iceland as a test tube, the way they treated Israel as a test tube, and it's just catastrophic. The people I met afterwards are so injured. Dr. Thorp, not even talk about reproductive injuries, but people losing their capacity of their limbs one by one, horrific florid neurological events. You could really see the wreckage, because it was such, I don't know if they used a different formula or if it's just a more highly vaccinated, almost completely vaccinated population. Maybe the fact that everyone's vaccinated intensifies the effects because everyone's shedding on everyone. I don't know. But again, going back to our earlier point, these are questions that should be under active study, right? Like, what happened to this population? And one thing I want to say to you is, it's so evil. Literally, this is why I was crying earlier today. The evilness of it just doesn't stop. The government of Iceland stopped keeping miscarriage and, population demographic data in 2020. So
isn't that interesting?
Isn't that interesting? 5 years later, you can't see what's happened to the population from government sources post 2020. So that's something that we'll keep an eye on. In your expert opinion, is there a biological mechanism by which the spike protein could be disrupting reproductive health? What a great question via the Wellness Company.
I think there's some good data to support the extended spike supplement support that Dr. McCullough is using. I think it's the best evidence that we have that I've seen. It's not obviously, it's not a randomized, double-blinded or a prospective trial. But of course, none of the vaccines underwent that scrutiny either. But in terms of his observational data, I think it's a pretty strong. So, what I'm telling my patients that come to me before pregnancy, Dr. Thorp, what can we do? Yeah, we took the vaccine. And so, the first thing I tell them to do is get your vitamin D level up to the top of normal, up to about 100, 90 or 100 ng per ml. You can't just go by an oral dose. Number two.
Wait, how do you do that? By injection?
No, you can continue to take the oral dose, but the oral dosing is so variable that you cannot rely on just taking a dose. You have to do a blood test. So you can go to that portal that I talked about, ultalabtest.com, and order your own vitamin D levels, $20 or whatever.
I guess what I mean is, if you find out your vitamin D levels are low, what can you do to supplement in addition to?
Double up on the amount that you're taking, or triple up on it, and make sure it goes up to 100. Many of the people are down in the range of only 20 or 30, which is extremely low. They need to be up to 100. That's the first thing. The second thing, obviously, is
Excuse me, how does vitamin D affect reproduction?
Vitamin D affects the immune system. It's probably the most important biological monitor director of the immune system that we have. It regulates probably over 300 genes that regulate the immune system. If your vitamin D levels aren't up to the upper limits of normal, that's part of the pathophysiology of spike and of COVID and of this post-vaccine pathophysiology. So that's really important. The second thing is get the lab test and see if you have high antibodies directed against the spike. And if you do, then I would go on an aggressive supplement. And I think the best one out there is the McCullough protocol with the extended spike support. I don't think there's any other product that I'm aware. And I recognize I'm on the board of the wellness company. So, just telling everybody that I have a potential conflict of interest. Of course I do. But I've not seen any other company or any other data that would contradict McCullough protocol. None of the other, the other thing is many other companies have kind of copied our protocol. So there must be something to it.
Are you finding that other obstetricians or gynecologists are prescribing either Dr. McCullough's protocol or similar supplements? Like, has word gotten out that this has a protective effect on women and moms?
They are. I'm getting approached from people all the time now, especially in my Midwest, where I fly from Florida. I'm flying there tomorrow again for another 2-week stay, stint up there. But I get now people calling me all the time, asking me about the wellness company and the spike protein and so on and so forth. I think the word is really getting out. And I do want to make one thing clear. I am not, nor is anybody at the wellness company, comfortable with using the spike formulations during pregnancy. It's fine if you conceive on it. That's a great thing if you conceive. But, after conception, I think that the wisest thing to do would be to taper off it, because I don't have enough safety data of nattokinase in pregnancy. As you know, it has some anticoagulant properties. So I don't, until I see more safety data, it shouldn't be used in pregnancy.
Dr. Thorp, I'm shocked you don't believe in experimenting on pregnant women. That was a bad joke, exactly. Reflective of our times. So So I duly noted, but I'm really glad to hear that the word is getting out and that women are optimizing, and maybe men too, right, their reproductive health by taking the spike detox formula before they conceive or up to the point of conception. Do you think it benefits men too reproductively to take this formula?
Yeah, I think that any person that was vaccinated and has high anti-spike levels should certainly consider the extended spike support supplement. I think so. You know, there's been a lot of publications on, especially on nattokinase. Chen and colleagues 2 or 3 years ago published a huge study from China showing that it dramatically reduced cardiovascular complications such as plaque, the so-called calcium score on your carotid arteries, the plaque, the atherosclerosis, reduce it for just in 12 months, reduced it by 10 to 20%.
Amazing.
So it really, and also reduced their cholesterol, improved their safe and healthy cholesterols, and had an overall effect, very positive effect on plaques, atherosclerosis, and on lipids. That was a very large study, over 1,000 individuals.
Wow. Again, it should be front page news, right? I just had a really cool idea. What if we lobby? I shouldn't tell you to say this because you have a conflict of interest, but I can say it. I want to lobby HHS the way that the Biden administration bought up all this damaging, sterilizing, disabling injection, paid for it with our taxpayer dollars, and distributed it to everyone for free, practically. We really should I should lobby RFK Jr. to buy up a lot of McCullough's protocol and distribute it to women who are getting pregnant or who want to get pregnant, or to couples who want to get pregnant. I mean, we have a real fertility crisis in our country and worldwide, but we have a smart, knowledgeable person at HHS, and maybe they should be funding the distribution of Dr. McCullough's protocol so we can have healthy babies. I think that's
excellent idea. I'm really disappointed that I didn't see him at the top of the FDA or as a Surgeon General. And I think the reason is obvious, because he was so adamant from the very beginning against the vaccine and how dangerous it was. So there's just no room for somebody like that in this current administration, I'm really sad to say.
I mean, I think RFK Jr. is making some important moves. It's slow, but some significant ones. I mean, I guess that's a discussion for another time.
I hope so. I was disappointed in some of his rhetoric in West Texas with the measles. Very disappointed to hear him pushing the measles vaccine.
That was unfortunate. Yeah.
In the last 25 years, I've verified, on VAERS, there's been 143 deaths from the measles vaccine, and that's only 1%. It's underreported. So there's probably over 14,000 deaths from measles vaccine in the United States of America since the turn of the century. You know how many people have died from measles from the government sources in that same 25 years? 9 people.
Oh my gosh.
So
insane. That's insane math. The world is upside down.
It is.
Yeah. I mean, hopefully, if we keep what I always say at these moments is it's up to us to keep, holding our representatives' feet to the fire. Even if we elect good people, they're really not free to do everything they should do unless we continue to push. But let me ask you our last final question. I only have you for a minute or two. Have you personally seen or heard from patients, especially women, who did experience improvements after using spike detox protocols? And if so, what were their improvements?
I have not been following them long enough with the extended spike supplement. So I don't have the long overview, yet enough data, enough time with the patients that I've recommended be on it to see their outcomes. Great question. It's a terrific question. I wonder on our next interview if you could get me on with Dr. Marty McCary, and you and I and Marty could have a really great discussion.
I can ask. I mean, I can certainly ask the White House to give me that interview. I haven't been successful going through, those channels in the past, but I will try. Why not? I'm a journalist and he's a public figure and public official. And it would be very important to have a discussion or a debate or an exchange between the two of you. And I would be
awesome.
To facilitate. I'll hop off and reach out to the White House and see what I can do. I hope they will return my call. Well, on that note, sadly, we've run out of time. It's always so inspiring to be with you. Do you have any final words of hope for all those, young couples who might want to get pregnant, or people who are women who are already pregnant, worried about their babies? What can they hope for?
We hope for the best, because our hope is not of this world or not of this dimension, but we always look forward and we do the best we can to improve our current state. Keep trying to have babies, optimize your fertility, look at your vitamin D levels, eat healthy, stay away from the foods that are not healthy and loaded with poisons, and treat yourself well and have hope.
Beautiful, beautiful. We're so lucky to have you, Dr. Thorp. I can't wait to speak with you again. Thank you for honoring us with your time. Thank you for all the work you're doing, and give my very best to your beautiful wife. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Dr. Wolf, and thank you for having me on your illustrious platform again.
It's very kind. Take care. Bye-bye.
Bye-bye.